All right, friends, we are back, baby, with another episode of Pointers with the Pros. It's been a minute.
Been a couple of years, I
Been
think.
a minute. Okay, we've been working and we've been hunting you down, all of our customers. Y'all have been busy bees, and we're just trying to get you on the phone and get you on here for Pointers with the Pros. And this episode is all about that introductory period, figuring out if Dustless Blasting is the best option for you and what that startup process looks like. But I think it's only fair that our listeners get to know us a little bit better. So we're going to start each episode of Pointers with the Pros with a fun little fact.
Okay.
I think it has to be Dustless related. So Michael Gallardi, if you were going to go into business for yourself and you were going to own a Dustless Blasting business, what blasting system would you buy and why?
I did not prepare for this. Okay. I would say, do I need to use the truck that I have, or can I buy
No.
Okay.
Towing is not an issue, and neither is money.
Towing is not an issue. Okay.
And neither is money.
I'm going to get an 800 XL.
Okay, why?
Because from my experience, a lot of our businesses like want the 800 XL. They buy a 500S and then they ended up wanting an 800 XL. Like that's their next machine purchase.
Do you know why I'm laughing?
Why?
Because I don't know if you can back up an 800 XL.
Yeah, probably not. Maybe I should get like a 350.
I thought, okay, for the record, some backup. We were on a shoot once and there were three of us, and we ran into a situation where it was a dead end road. Michael here and the other person, I'm not going to name names, Reed Walker, could not back up the trailer. And so here comes Kaylin getting out of her little Lexus, coming to save the day and back up the trailer. So
yeah, we had to have Kaylin do it because neither of the men could back up a 500 Mobile S.
Beep beep. Okay, well I'm going, if I'm starting a business, I'm going big. I'm going dual 800.
Oh wow.
Yeah. Like me and a friend, we're getting out there, double the operators, double the profit, go big or go home.
Got it.
All right. Well, I guess let's do this thing. Welcome to the, what episode are we on? We don't know.
I don't know.
Welcome.
14?
Yeah, 14-ish. Welcome to the 14-ish episode of Pointers with the Pros. Michael, I want you to tell us about our guest, Mike.
So our guest today is going to be Mike Robison of Dustless Blasting.
Yes.
He runs a business out of Tulsa, Oklahoma. I found him on YouTube, actually. I found him personally through my own personal account.
Yes.
Through YouTube.
The algorithm is algorithming.
He was showing up, like, blasting all kinds of things. And I recommend anyone who's watching or listening to this, if you're curious about any type of thing being blasted, I would go to his channel, search it up. He's probably blasted that or something similar, at least once.
And so why we chose Mike, I mean, besides all the awesome content that he's putting out on YouTube, but he's actually already been in business for himself for a year now. So we thought, what an awesome opportunity it would be to see kind of how that first year went and, kind of tips and tricks along the way in that first year.
Yeah. So let's just jump right in with our first question. So I'd love to start with just you introducing yourself, telling me some of your background, whether you had prior experience in sandblasting prior to owning your own business, and how you made that transition into owning your own Dustless Blasting business.
So I'm a sales guy. I worked in corporate sales for the better part of 20 years. I did a lot of traveling in my career. So I was constantly on the road, constantly in airports and hotels. And I really just started to get kind of burnt out, and all along, I was always kind of thinking like, boy, what would it be like to own my own business? And like, could I match, and make as much, or would it be better? I just had a lot of thoughts about it. And so over time, I looked into doing different businesses. And so it all kind of worked out perfectly in a way. I'm kind of burnt out, and the pandemic hits, and I find myself without a job because my job was to like travel around all the time. So instantly that's all gone. And I'm just like sitting at home with nothing to do, going crazy. And I remembered I had a cousin that did frame off restorations and rebuilt engines. And so I called him up and I was like, hey, what are you working on while sort of downtime now? And he was like, oh, I'm just, at my shop working on, I just got a 69 Chevelle doing total frame off restoration. And I asked him, I was like, would you mind if I come? I'm just like a white collar guy, but like, do you mind if I come and learn as much as I can, just maybe help you out a little bit? And so he sort of took me on. And at one point, we needed to do some sandblasting. The engine bay and the undercarriage of the car all needed to be sandblasted. And I had heard of sandblasting. Like I knew, generally speaking, it's like sand and high pressure, but he had like rigged up this sandblasting machine. So it was like a souped up pressure washer that he made into a sandblaster. And so he brings this thing out and I'm like, this is kind of interesting. And we start using it and it kept breaking down and we're having problems, but I got to see like how effective it was and how we like cleaned all this dirt and grime out of the engine compartment, and then did the undercarriage, got rid of all the rust, and I was like really impressed. But in my mind, I'm thinking there's got to be like a professional version of this, And then, sure enough, I think it was just a short time later, I was watching a video on YouTube about this guy that restores cars, and he was having a car blasted, and he had a company come out that had the dustless blasting equipment, and I'm like, there it is, that's it, And so that's how I found you guys.
His main question was, could he make as much?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Or could he make more, right?
Yeah.
I would say for anyone who's in a similar position as Mike was, we have a total investment checklist, which goes through the most common major startup costs, like just the equipment itself, any sort of insurance for your business or for your trailer, personal protection equipment, like a Nova hood. And it's on our blog called What is My Total Investment? And that also includes stuff like, how much weight your truck needs to be able to tow, per piece of equipment that we have.
Sure. And I think that this is the case for a lot of our customers who start their own business. This is an opportunity where you don't have to have experience, running a business or have an experience, sandblasting before. Most of our guys, in fact, have never even seen sandblasting done in person. And so we understand the insecurities there for people who are new to this. And so we do try to have a ton of resources available for those who are interested in owning their own business, but don't really know what that next step is. So I think that's a great starting point for them, is to see that total investment. But then also, which Mike, I think, talks about later, is once you've, talked to a sales rep and you've started to consider one piece of equipment over the other, it's fair to ask what those hourly operation costs look like so you can see, okay, am I going to actually make some money off this? What would my profit margins look like for different industries? And that'll help you, decide which services you actually want to offer in the long run.
About the DB500 Mobile S, which is the trailer that you chose.
Yeah.
I wanted to know why you chose that trailer and what are some of your favorite parts about it?
I really liked that trailer because my goal, it's kind of a long story to get to that, but I wanted to start this business up and have the lowest overhead possible. And part of that was not having a shop or a warehouse. I thought, if I could store the machine in my garage at home, that would be a huge savings, at least starting the business initially. And so that's one of the reasons I chose basically the smallest one you guys make, because it just fit in my garage. I measured all out, double checking, and yes. And so for that reason, it's worked out great. I'm able to fit it in my garage and still have my car in there as well. I have my truck outside, but it works real well, and I'm able to keep the thing in great shape because it's garage kept.
I think a lot of people decide or opt for our DB500 Mobile S. However, I think it's important to note here that that mobile is not our smallest machine anymore.
Yeah.
Since Mike has purchased, we actually have created an even more compact mobile blasting system that can also fit in a standard size garage. But at the time that Mike purchased, this was our most compact blasting system. However, I will say that the machine he went with is still our most popular system
For sure.
because it is the most scalable starting point for our new business owners. So I know that this episode is going to be super helpful for people who are new to the industry or considering purchasing a blasting system. So I think I want to throw that little tidbit out there that if you're wanting a really, affordable but scalable option, the 500S is a great starting point for you.
Mike did here. Really, that's what we recommend to do is to, spend some time researching our equipment line. Every single model is purpose built, right? It's built for a very specific type of pursuit. Right?
Sure. And talking that over with the sales rep here is the best way to go. You talk about your budget, your goals, your business goals, your personal goals. When I first started working here, they told me that thing, because it looks pretty big in person. Mm-hmm. I don't think people realize how big it actually is.
Yeah, we say it's small, but it's
small
beefy.
To us, but it's big. And when I first started working here, they were like, yeah, this thing, it can fit in a standard garage. And I was like, you're full of crap. This is not going inside a garage. So we actually took it to my house and backed it in my garage. And I had to see it closed just for proof. So for everyone out there, it can fit in a standard size garage. And I can speak to that.
So no piece of blasting equipment is perfect. That goes across our line and goes across other competing brands. And any chance we get, I try to get feedback from our customers, because 90+% of our customers we never hear back from because they have a great experience. There's no problems. They, if they need a part, they buy it from our online store. If they need to do maintenance, they know what to do, right?
Yeah, we're pretty much having to chase these guys down and say, hey, pay attention to us. We know you're doing great, sweetie, but we want to hear from you. Tell us what's up. What are you doing? How can we help you?
Right. We get a little bored, No, so I asked him, we ask everybody, what about our trailer could use some improvement?
Okay.
I really it's just such a all around good machine. I don't have any things I don't like about it. Now, if I was going to nitpick and there's a couple little things I would change, the power cords that you use running to your redhead, your dead man, or whatever you call it, to blast, they're actually good quality power cords, but the connections on them are not good quality. And so I'll find I connect everything up, I go to blast, and it doesn't work. And I look down and the cord got unplugged because I pulled the hose a little bit and it unplugged. So maybe making something with a little more substantial clip when you're clipping those things together, I think that would go a long way. That's been my biggest headache.
Okay, yeah. I mean, it's always good to hear that. It's totally fine to be honest about the parts of the machine that could use improvement. We take that directly to the people who make them. So,
and I bet you do.
It's good to hear. But that's great that, the issues that you have with the machine over just over a year are just, minor things that we could definitely take a look at. Okay, so we actually did follow up with our engineers about this. The feedback that they gave us was that the end connectors on that electric line that he's talking about, it is a common issue if it's assembled in a certain way. What we recommend that you do is give slack on both ends.
Right.
In total, about 5 feet of slack. So that whenever you are fully extended 100 feet or 50 feet, depending on your configuration, that the stress is being put on the blast hose itself. That's really well connected with that lug nut, right? As opposed to the electric line, which is, just a little cord. So that's our official recommendation for what to do. We've seen people tackle this various ways. Some people have chosen to cut the connectors and actually install more durable connectors. You can approach it whichever way that you feel is necessary. That said, internally, we found that it's a non-issue if you just add slack on both ends. Yeah.
Awesome. No, we really appreciate the feedback and are always looking for ways just to, make things easier, whether it's with our equipment or our marketing services or even just finding information online. So we always appreciate good feedback and criticism constructively, of course.
Yeah, and another thing to say is what do you do when something goes wrong? Because I've had a couple small things go wrong, And I've had a great experience there working with Chris in the parts department. I had a hose start to leak and called him, sent him a picture, and he had one in the mail. I think it was that day. I got it a day later, no downtime. I had an issue with my fuel filter. I didn't know it was my fuel filter. My machine was like dying on me, and I told him all about it. He went and contacted all the people and did the research and found like a old school guy that knew exactly what to do. And he was like, "You don't need to take it in for warranty. You just need to replace the fuel filter and you'll be good." And so like a couple of those experiences happened, and I felt really good about the team I have backing me up there at your company.
Well, that makes my heart really happy because us on the marketing side of things, I don't know if everyone's familiar with our academy, but we are tasked with constantly updating our online support for our owners specifically. And so it is just super rewarding to hear that Mike is able to take advantage of some of these. And so for those who don't know, we have a complete online academy that has hundreds of guides and how-to videos. So if someone's out in the field, they can just whip out their phone and pull up an article to troubleshoot their machine, or they can call in and get someone on the phone to help, talk through what might be happening. And I think that's why a lot of people end up purchasing from us because they don't have to hire a service tech to come out on the field.
For sure. Any sort of operation that they need help with, they can find a guide for that on our academy. Right. If they need some very specific niche advice, like they can call it tech support.
Yeah.
And if they need some maintenance done, they can order the parts and do it themselves. Like it's simply built machine. It's reliable, all that.
Not overly intricate. I've heard a lot of people mention that before, that they really take pride in being able to take care of everything themselves and not spend a ton of money on expensive wear items. Maintaining your pod is actually super affordable. So
in the next clip, Mike actually talks about how he utilized our support. So I wanted to ask, how long did it take for you to feel comfortable operating your machine?
Not long. One good thing that I did that I suggest others do if they're interested in starting this business is to go down to Houston, take a flight down to Houston. You can fly there and back in the same day if you need to, but get a tour of the factory and use the machine. I had a real good sales guy, Lynn, and he invited me out, and I was like, you know what, that's a great idea. And so I literally got to see them making the machines from scratch, which is very cool. And then we went out back, they have a machine all ready to go, and all these different types of scenarios you could blast, whether it be like a brick wall or a piece of metal. And so they just turned me loose, and I just went around there and tested it out on all kinds of stuff. So the first time I fired up the machine, I already felt like kind of comfortable because I had done that. Now, definitely I was nervous the first few jobs, and I made this huge checklist. You guys have some checklists and some good videos for starting out, and I used all that to compile a checklist for me that worked good for me. And so every time I was like meticulously going down this checklist for the startup and pressurizing the pot, all those sort of things, and that helped. I would say after about 2 or 3 jobs, I was like, okay, all right, I know the little ins and outs. I feel comfortable.
You heard the man. Get down here, baby. We want to see you in Houston, Texas. We want to meet our friends who are about to go into business for themselves, but also we want to make sure you feel confident and know how to turn the system on and off. I promise you that is probably the hardest part for most people. I know we're going to touch on that in a second, but honestly, I can operate a Dustless Blasting system better than I can operate our office printer by far.
Oh my, I haven't figured that printer out. I use other people's computers to print stuff. So,
but you can do a free on-site demo anytime, Monday through Friday, 8:30 to 5, or a lot of people choose to do their demonstration at the time of their pickup. So we can still schedule that if you choose to pick up your machine in person instead of having it shipped to you.
And I joke about how the thing that took me the longest, it probably took me 6 months before I felt comfortable backing my trailer into the driveway and into my garage. Like the hardest part of my day was like, I'd get home and I'd be like, oh my gosh, I got to back this thing up because I just didn't have any experience with it. So that was the biggest learning curve, is learning to back my trailer in places.
That's so funny. That was actually my biggest learning curve too. So sometimes we'll take these machines out to like shoot them with a drone or something. We just shoot them
Yeah,
down the highway, right?
right,
Sometimes I'm driving the truck, right? I have the exact same experience. I'm like, oh, this is easy to drive it forward, but then
right.
backing it up if you reach a dead end or something, yeah, I totally understand.
Yeah, and you get like maybe the FedEx guy sitting there waiting for you and one other person watching, and then the
Yeah,
pressure's on. It's like twice as hard.
exactly. We have a ton of resources.
Mm-hmm.
We often have overlapping content.
Yeah.
So just use what works best for you, right?
Yeah.
So we have, for example, if you want to learn how to operate a DP500 Mobile S, right? Like the machine that he chose, we have an Academy article for that.
Right.
We have a 20-minute video for that.
Right.
And you can call us.
Yeah.
We have a demo.
And we have a manual.
Right. We have a manual.
And we have a phone number.
Yeah. And we have parts diagrams for repairing any sort of thing on it if that's needed. We try to give you anything that you need in whatever form works best for you.
Yes.
And even Mike said that with all of that, he ended up making a checklist, like a personal one, right? That sort of combined what worked for him into a checklist that made him feel comfortable for those first couple of jobs until he felt comfortable enough to just do it without it.
Yeah. And I think that's awesome. Take everything that we're providing you and put it in a format that works best for you and your brain.
Right. Okay, so I want to pivot to talking a little bit about your business. If you could give me like a brief overview, who does the blasting? If you have a crew, what does that look like? What type of jobs you typically do if you have a niche?
Yep.
Yeah, if we can get started with that.
Okay, so I started in this business and I'm like, this is just me getting started. Like I have no help. And so I've got to figure out how I could build this business in such a way that I automate or hire out as many little things as I can in order to basically have no employees, because I wanted the business to be as simple as possible with the lowest expenses when I started it. I got started and it was kind of like there was tempting times where I thought like maybe I should hire a secretary or maybe I should do that. And I think it all goes down or all goes back to sort of building a foundation for your business. I got an LLC set up, filed for my EIN, started developing my business name. At that point, I hired a graphics guy because I'm not good at graphics. I sort of know marketing a little bit. That's what I went to college for, but also that's been many years ago. So that's sort of obsolete. So hired a guy to make a logo for me. I came up with the name of the company, and that started getting some momentum. Then set up like QuickBooks so I could automate all my finances. Got a business bank account with a credit card, so all expenses would go through one account and then go into QuickBooks, and I could sort of automate it that way. And then I actually decided to hire an accounting company so that I could just keep really good track of everything, and they do my taxes and all of that sort of stuff. In retrospect, I don't really think that's necessary your first year. That might be more of a second year type of thing. And then I set up, wanted to have like a good voicemail in place and a good presence online, setting up like a good Google business profile so that people can find my website, look at my Google business profile, and then call me. And then if I'm out doing a job, they get a greeting. They know they got the right place. They can leave a message. Just like I said, as many things as I could to automate.
So just based off that answer alone, you can definitely tell he's had some experience running his own business before, right? Very detail oriented, very extensive, doing, in my opinion, a little bit more than what's needed to start off, right? And he even admitted that. I mean, it obviously succeeded. And his goal was just build a solid foundation, automate the things that he couldn't do or didn't want to do, right? And outsourcing the tasks that really he just didn't have time to do, right?
Right. I think that is great to be ahead of the game. Have a complete business plan, how you're going to operate your business, but also start thinking about marketing and who's going to be building a website for you, whether it's us and you take advantage of our marketing services, or, I know Mike worked in marketing and sales, so he felt confident in building his own website, but then used us and our knowledge for Google ads. So let's hear what he had to say on how he approached his marketing and advertising his new business.
I have a question about your marketing. What methods so far have worked for you in terms of marketing? So, well, it's not just marketing actually. Marketing, advertising, is word of mouth more powerful than marketing in your case? Are you using anything like truck wraps or yard signs or anything like that?
So it all started with Google Ads. If I wasn't using Google Ads, I'd probably be out of business by now. That has
Mhm.
been the lifeblood of all of the work that I'm getting. So it's important to have a website, have a contact form, have a company name and logo, all of those things to legitimize your business, have the social media presence. But what I did with you guys is way before I bought my machine, I'm talking to my sales guy, Lynn. Shout out to him. He was great. Like, he
Hmm.
wasn't just trying to sell me a machine, he was trying to show me how to set up the business. And he's like, look, man, we've got it all. We've got business cards, brochures. We do the advertising for you. We could build a website. And, you got to go within your budget. So I realized, like, okay, I can afford to set up a website with have my logo made and all of that. I can afford to get some business cards. I can afford to get some brochures. And then I can't really afford like a big fancy website. So I'll have to do something real basic for now. But then I really saw the value of doing the Google advertising. So about a month and a half before I bought my machine, didn't know when I was going to buy my machine, but I told Lynn, I said, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to start advertising. I'm going to start going around soliciting businesses, giving cards, brochures. And once I get some jobs, I'm going to come down there and get my machine. So I made sure that a machine was available on short notice and all that sort of stuff. And then you guys have a Google Ads package, and I
Hmm.
want to say I bought like the best ones. It was like the most exposure you can get in a month, and I bought that, and that was just gold. So I had my website set up for about 2 months, never got a call, nothing, zero.
Hmm.
The moment we put the Google Ads in place, the phone starts ringing, the emails start coming in from my website, and right away, I went out and did 2 jobs with no machine, nothing, no access to the Facebook group. So I don't know what I'm doing, but I booked 2 jobs, called up Lynn. I said, all right, I'm ready to come get that machine. So from the moment I left Houston, I came straight back to Tulsa, and the next day started a job. And I highly recommend to start out that way. Don't go out and buy a machine and then look for the business. Look for the business, get a little something coming in, and then buy the machine.
He nailed it. He
Yeah.
really nailed it. That is something that I wish all our business owners would hear and retain and memorize. It is crucial that you have an online presence and digital advertising before you have the equipment. It would be better for you to have it before you had the equipment than after, every day of the week. You don't have a storefront that people can just stumble upon in your community.
Hmm.
And nowadays, everyone Googles everything.
Yeah.
I do not use flyers. Like, I'm not looking through my junk mail. You need to be online. And we have a variety of marketing services. Do you want to hit on those just so people are aware of what we offer?
Yeah. So we have 3 tiers of Google ads, and then we have 3 tiers of Meta ads. So depending on what platform you want to hit, we can target specific industries and do keyword targeting, location targeting, right?
Yeah.
Demographic targeting.
And we recently discovered that everyone wasn't looking for the same thing. So what we've done now with our marketing services is it's very a la carte. You can choose your, the Dustless Blasting website if that's all you need and you want to run your Google ads by yourself. Or if you have a buddy who can create your own website, that's great, but you have no idea what you're doing as far as Google advertising, then we can help you with that. If you just need a logo, we can help you with that. If you just need business cards. So we just want to help set everyone up for success and their specific needs. So if you have any questions on marketing services, go to dustlessblasting.com and you'll be able to check that out on our website. But what's next up for Mike?
So next up, I asked him a little bit more about how he chose to market his business. And Mike ends up speaking a bit about some new strategy he's been implementing recently to boost organic traffic, which is something we don't talk too much about.
We love organic traffic.
But yeah, internally, we do a lot of organic traffic work. And I think it's a very unique tip that Mike's given his 2 decades of sales experience.
Awesome.
So let's hear what he has to say about that.
So as time's gone on, I had you guys doing all my Google ads for me. And as I mentioned before, I have a background in marketing. So I was like, I would ultimately like to do this myself. And everybody was real open with helping me transition over to eventually managing that myself. And just because I wanted to learn it, and I realized how obsolete my marketing degree is in the digital age, but it was cool to start seeing how the keywords work and all of that. But again, I recommend you have Dustless Blasting do that for you at first, because they know all the right keywords. And when you're first starting out, that's very important. So I started managing that. And so then you start tweaking around with it. You're like, what time do I want to put ads in front of people? What age range? And you can go so deep on that. Then I decided, it would really be great to get some organic traffic. And so you kind of have paid traffic coming to you, or organic traffic where people find you without the use of an ad. And I thought, okay, if I set up social media and I put videos out there, eventually that will bring some people back to me. If I have a good website, people will find that eventually. That'll bring people back to me. And so about 3 or 4 months ago, I actually hired a marketing company. So I spent, so people know, I was spending on average about $500 a month on Google Ads. I found that was kind of the sweet spot. It absolutely paid for itself, and it provided me several jobs. So that was going well. But I hired a marketing company, and they are charging me about $500 a month. And they go in and just sort of optimize everything. They make sure your business, Google business profile has all the little things it needs in order for Google to send it organic traffic. So do you have some reviews? Is the business hour set up? Do you have business pages in the cities around you? All these little things I had no idea about. So they were very helpful there. They literally started managing my website, I guess you could say. I gave them access. And so they made a blog section on my website. They started posting blogs using AI. So they have AI, they'll tell AI, hey, write a blog on sandblasting pools and all the ways it can be done. And then they'll tweak it and humanize it a little bit. They'll send it over to me. I'll review it. So we're putting those blog posts out there. And all of that sort of stuff is going to develop organic traffic. But I realized it's really slow. It's like moving the Titanic versus the Google ads is flipping a switch and you have the business. So I think you need both, and you sort of can maybe wean off the Google ads after a year or two and be fully organic.
So I want to pause there because I think there was something in there that he said that's super important for people to know. And that is that the Google advertising subscription, if you're going to do it, do it in the beginning, because that is when it is really impactful and really most important to get eyes on your business while, your organic traffic is slowly building up.
Right. His YouTube presence is going to build over time. He'll gain subscribers. This marketing company that he's working with is helping him to build organic traffic via blogs.
Right.
And all of that's going to cumulatively eventually snowball into getting him enough work where he can wean off of Google ads, just like he said.
Right. But that takes time.
It does.
Building your organic traffic takes time. So paying the most money upfront for Google Ads is the best way to go in the beginning.
Yeah, agreed.
And I'm starting to get the word of mouth a little bit now too. I find that most jobs are one and done. You'll never see the person again, 90% of them. But you never know if they might refer you to one of their friends. And I've definitely found that when I go out and do these jobs, at first I would ask people like, oh, would you mind if I filmed a video of me doing this? And they'd be like, oh, yeah, I guess. And then I figured out I would just tell them, I'm like, hey, I just wanted to let you know, man, this process is really noisy and gets a little dusty. And so I'm going to film a little video of the whole process for you. And then I'll send it over to you tomorrow so you can see exactly how it worked. And they're like, oh, that's cool. And so I guarantee you, when people get those videos, they send them to their brother-in-law or their dad or whatever. Check it out. This guy came out and blasted my car today. And so all of that is slowly moving the Titanic a little bit, and I think that's gonna really start to. I'm gonna start to cash in there, but I'm kind of happy with where I'm at by just kind of the first year, just do Google Ads. After that, start mixing in some of this like more organic and SEO, search engine optimization.
Yeah, I gotta say that's so smart and something I never considered. Just filming, of course, like filming your jobs is helpful for other reasons, but for the purpose of giving your client a copy of it so that they can show the process to other people they may know. That's really smart. And
Oh,
I wholeheartedly agree with the idea that you should be looking for work before you buy the machine. It's definitely something that we try to preach as much as possible. It's also what a lot of the people that we've interviewed on this show prior have said, that
yes,
they secured work first, or they secured work on the way, right? And then
yeah.
they did the work as they drove back to wherever they wherever they're located.
You guys do a really good job compared to the reason I went with this business compared to all the other ones I'm looking at, like ice vending and things like that, is you guys have a whole system in place to help people start a small business, almost like it's a franchise. You have all this marketing stuff, but without all of the problems and red tape of a franchise. So that is huge. All those little things when you're first starting out are big. And you're right. The sales guys encourage you to go out there and get the business before you buy the machine. And you guys finance a lot of the machines, so you have a vested interest in making sure people are successful. So I think it works really well. And one other thing I wanted to add is when I send out I had an epiphany when I send out the videos to people. That is the absolute best time to get a Google review. The guy I hired from the
Hmm.
marketing company was getting on me. He's like, you have no reviews. Google doesn't like that. You need some reviews. And so I started reaching out to past customers. And, if I talked to you 6 months ago, maybe you'll do a review. But I send the video and I say, oh, if you wouldn't mind, here's the link. It will literally take 30 seconds. You can hit 5 stars and write a little something. So the videos have gone so far with me. People share them, then they go do the review, and it just all kind of comes together. Another thing I wanted to mention to everybody that I've uncovered is that TikTok is where it's at right now. TikTok reminds me of like Facebook in 2006. People would be like, "Oh, you're on Facebook," like that's childish. I tell people I'm on TikTok. They're like, "What do you do? Dances on there and stuff?" Like, don't be afraid of TikTok. I think that's where it's all going. If you look at all the stats, they are like blowing up. So, for example, if I post a video on YouTube, maybe I get 10 views, maybe it'll go up to 100 views after a while. I put it on TikTok, I'll get 800 views overnight. And so it's clear to me that's where all the action is. So I also like to just post on all the platforms. It's the same video. I just post it on all the platforms. And I like to do YouTube when I send the video out to people, because plenty of people don't have a TikTok account or maybe don't have Instagram, and they'll try to do it and they can't log in or whatever. But pretty much everybody has access to YouTube. So I think that's the best way to deliver it. But yep, TikTok's where it's at right now.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's a yeah, it has the most traffic. Like you'll get the most views on TikTok. They may not be the most like high quality views. Like a lot of people are
Right.
just scrolling instantly.
Hmm.
So YouTube is still important if
Absolutely.
if you want to get like high quality views. But I'd say yeah, you're doing it right by posting at both places. Show no loyalty to any platform. Just post your content everywhere. I think that's a good strategy.
We know, Mike, that you are dancing on TikTok also. No, just kidding. But yes, so many people are looking for that satisfying content on TikTok. But then I love what he said, that he's actually sending his YouTube links out to, clients who are looking for what he's capable of. And so that's great advice. Being active on social media is definitely important when you're a business owner this day and age. But what else do you got for me? What's next?
We have another pointer from Mike, and he has an interesting take on cleanup.
Ooh.
Really, I do all the blasting work. I'm hiring out the marketing. When I first started, I would hire out the cleanup because real quickly I realized that's a lot of labor that's really not worth your time. And I saw that in some videos and stuff. And so at first I started hiring people, and I still will if I do like a really big job, like the pool, for example.
Sure.
I would definitely hire someone. But a lot of times I realize just give people a better price, tell them you're giving them a better price and have them do the cleanup. And that actually works really well too.
No, I think that's the way to go. We say it sometimes, we really should talk about it more, but cleanup is sometimes half of the job, right? Because blasting
Yes.
is a lot of times pretty fast. That's where you get most of your margins, and then of course cleanup is sometimes a headache, so
Right. It's kind of like painting, you spend a lot of time
mhm.
prepping and cleaning
Yeah.
up, and the amount of time you spend painting something is very little. It's all in the prep work a lot of times. So it's just like that with blasting. You blast for, an hour, but you spend 3 hours on the setup and
Yeah.
cleanup.
I find a lot of value in hearing how somebody is like looking to scale his business long term and is thinking of any optimization you can make.
Sure.
Right. So in this case, he's looking for, how do I spend the least time on the job and make the most money?
Yeah. And cleanup is a pain.
Yeah.
If it were me, I would never clean up.
Just generally in life.
Just in general. And my husband would agree. But seriously, the cleanup is something that you have to take into consideration. You have to quote your prep and your cleanup. And I love, 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 love what he said about giving the client maybe two options. Here's a quote with cleanup. Here's one without. And you choose, do you want to spend the money to pay me to clean it up, or do you want to do it yourself? And then you're out of there if they choose to do the cleanup themselves. That's awesome.
Right. And if they end up choosing that Mike does the cleanup, he'll just outsource that.
Yeah.
So it's just built into his cost.
That's
right?
awesome.
It's a very smart way to do it. But of course, you need to have like high quality clients to do that.
Sure. And if anyone's wondering like, okay, cleanup, what are you guys talking about? Don't know. We have a containment, prep, and cleanup blog on our academy that I would definitely recommend you looking at. There's different containment and cleanup options for different types of jobs. So if you're blasting a boat, that containment's going to look very different than if you're blasting a pool or a driveway. And some jobs, there's really minimal prep. Sometimes there's no prep. Sometimes there's a lot of prep. So if you are wanting to see what that looks like, hit our academy up and ask your sales rep so that you can figure out what that looks like and how that will work into your business.
Right. It's all based on the job. And the reason so many people choose Dustless Blasting is because it gives you every tool available.
Sure.
If you need a wet blast, if you need a dry blast, it's all available to you in the same way that some jobs may require cleanup, some may not require it. So we're talking to Mike and we're going through all these different things, all these tips, tricks that he's learned over his first year.
Yeah.
And I asked him about, does he have a niche? Like, has he dialed into a specific industry? Or is he looking into the future and does he have a goal, right? And this is what he had to say about discovering his niche.
You were asking what my niche is, and I didn't know that going into it. I'm like, well, I've always been interested in auto refinishing, like $10,000 candy paint jobs and stuff, and always been interested in that process. I don't even know why exactly, and that's one of the reasons I got into the business, because I'm like, oh, you can use this for cars. I'm interested in this. You've got to have an interest in the business you're doing, and that was kind of the way. So I started out, and I thought, well, I'm going to get brochures for like everything, industrial, residential, all that. I'm going to start advertising, and I'm just going to do some jobs and see what I like. And so honestly, I had no idea what to expect, what kind of jobs I would get. And they just started coming in, and it is everything you can imagine. I've done commercial jobs, I've done residential jobs, I blasted some light fixtures for a lady that took like 20 minutes. I blasted a huge pool that took a week. And so I've gotten a really good idea of all the different types. And I learned there was one thing I definitely don't like doing, and that's park benches that have that like rubberized coating on them.
Oh,
I got a
okay.
job doing those, and I actually put it on the Facebook page, and everyone warned me. They're like, "Oh, stay away from those; those are crazy." And I did one of those jobs, and it just took forever, and I just hated
Yeah.
it. But other than that, I've liked most of the stuff I've done, and here in Oklahoma, I've noticed as you get out in the surrounding areas, small towns where people have land, there's a lot of oil. There's still a lot of oil in
Mm.
Oklahoma. So it's not uncommon for a person that has a little piece of land to have a little oil pump and a storage tank for it. And it's just pumping away, making them a little money. Well, all those storage tanks and all that equipment start to rust and corrode after a while. And there's no option to take that into a place to get blasted. They need someone to come to them. So I think that's something I'm going to start targeting in the next year. And I think that's something that once you do Bob's whole setup, he's going to tell his friends, and that could spread like wildfire. So I think that could be a really cool area.
It's a great idea. That's usually like you're on the pipeline to industrial work, and
Yeah.
dustless blasting is I mean, you may want to speak to someone more qualified, but as far as I understand, as a marketer, it produces a cold spark, so it's not gonna. There's no danger of igniting the flames or the
Right.
oil that's within the actual container. So yeah,
No,
I would
that's
say
great.
go for it.
Okay, let's talk about this because I think this is super important. When you are in the process, you're interested in dustless blasting, you're
Mhm.
ready to pull the trigger, you just don't know what machine you want to buy. The first thing your sales rep is going to ask you is, what services do you want to offer? Now, a lot of people in the beginning, which is totally fine, and I think it's a good approach. If a lot of people are like, I want to take on anything and everything.
Yeah.
I don't want to say no to work. So if someone's calling, I'm taking on the job. While that is an okay place to start, and I think it's smart to get a lot of different applications under your belt, find out what you're interested in. However, if that's what you're going to do, you're going to need a machine that can take on anything and everything.
True.
And so if you're going into this like, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I don't want to ever say no to a job, then your sales rep is probably going to recommend one of our bigger machines, like an 800 mobile. So be prepared for that. If you're like, well, let me think on that now that I know you're going to recommend a bigger machine for me, that's where we can match you with an appropriate machine for the industries that you want to offer. Because if you're just pursuing residential work, automotive, driveways, fences, stuff like that, then we can pair you with one of our smaller units. But if you tell me you're taking on anything, then I want you to have a machine that's capable of that. I also think like some of our most successful business owners do what Mike did. So they started out with that 500, took on anything and everything. And then they figured out, okay, the money is here. However, I'm making more in the commercial and industrial space.
Mm-hmm.
So now I'm going to add a bigger blasting system. And then they kind of take on everything. So they have their smaller unit more for the residential space, and then they have their bigger unit for the commercial and industrial space. So I've seen that work out really great for people as well.
So this is a question I really wanted to get into, given Mike's background in sales, how he prices jobs, right?
Ooh.
How does he utilize his experience in sales? Could you give us some general information on how you price jobs, how to prevent underbidding a job, for example, and sort of tips and techniques you may have?
Okay, yeah, that was something I was real concerned about when I first started. I was like, oh my gosh, I feel like I don't know what to do bidding jobs. And I think that's like any contractor that goes into business, bidding jobs is really hard at first. I mentioned earlier the Facebook group, and that ended up being a huge help when I was first starting out. And I see it all the time. A guy will put a post on there. He's like, I went out to bid this job today. I don't know how long this is going to take. And 3 or 4 people will chime in. They're like, oh, I did one just like that. It took this many bags of media. It took me 6 hours. And someone else might have, they're like, oh, mine was a nightmare. It took twice as long. And so it was really great. Like I could really depend on that Facebook group right at first, where like I get a job, I go out and I'm checking it all out. I'm going to submit a bid for it. So I come home and I would post it on the Facebook group. And literally that night I would have 4, 5, 10 answers. And so that really helped me to be more
Pause.
confident at first.
Okay. For those of you who don't know, Dustless Blasting has a private contractor group on Facebook just for our business owners. And this is such a valuable resource. Mike was kind of speaking to it, but I want to touch on it just in case people don't know what it is. We put you in this Facebook group. You can use it as a database to search for jobs. If you have an upcoming job that you've never done before, let's say you're putting a bid out on a pool and you're like, I have no idea how long this is going to take me, how much media, what pressure to use, what nozzle. You go in there, you search pools, you're going to see every pool job in there, how long it took them, et cetera, et cetera. And people are very helpful, very friendly, and they give feedback really quick. And we are also a moderator in there to make sure people are giving accurate information. But that's a huge resource for my newbies.
Yeah, and I check it all the time to see what people are blasting and, how successful our customers are.
And it's a confidence booster for our newbies. Like, oh, okay, all these guys are at this price range. They're all using this. This is their strategy. So I'm going to implement that too and make subtle changes. So you will have access to that if you decide to purchase a mobile blasting trailer from us.
Sometimes it's better just to hear from people who have been in your shoes, quite literally. You know, people who are doing the same work across the world or, a couple cities away.
But what I would recommend is when you're first starting out, try to bid jobs by the hour. I think you can make more money by just bidding the job in its entirety, but you're a lot safer bidding it by the hour. So for me personally, I usually charge about $250 an hour, and just like bar room napkin math, I think I'm spending about $50 an hour on media and fuel. So I'm making the $200 an hour. So let's say someone wants a car blasted, and I put in a bid. I say that'll be $1,000. And I come in and I blast the car in 3 hours. Well, I've done pretty well there. Whereas if I was charging them $250 an hour, I wouldn't have made as much, but there would have been no surprises. Now, what I found about charging by the hour is a lot of people just on its surface don't like the idea of being billed $250 an hour to do anything. I know I don't. Like when I take my car in, I'm like, what, $100 an hour, And so it's kind of all in the way you phrase it. So I'll ask the customer and I'll say, what is more important to you? Is it more important that you have an exact price bid for this job that won't change no matter what happens? Or is it more important to be economical and save the most amount of money as possible? And, 9 times out of 10, they're going to be like, well, I want to save as much money as possible. And I'll say, well, in that case, it's better to do this by the hour, because then you only pay for the time I'm here blasting. And that usually can get them to go down that path. But as I'm just rolling over my first year in business, I definitely want to start actually bidding the whole job more, because I think I'll make more money that way.
Right. And I agree. But I do want to say, Mike, I think your expertise in sales is showing here.
There was a lot of misses, where someone's like, $250 an hour. No, definitely not, And so I was like, oh, okay, that's like a big deal. And then I started thinking about it. Like I said, when I go in to get my car fixed, they charge me $135. I don't really like that. But yeah, it's just kind of all in the way you phrase it for them. And I am being honest, it is the best deal for them, So for what I'm doing, it works. It's a win-win.
So I don't know if this is common sense for other people, but I don't have a background in sales. And the way he phrased it there is, it makes sense to me. I'm convinced.
It's genius.
I suddenly trust you, with how you manage your time. Yeah. And my life.
No, this is so smart. And let me explain why this is. So I dabble on the sales side as well here, and so this is the number one question I get. Kaylin, how much am I going to make per hour? Or what does my profit really look like? And he's right. For when you are just beginning, it's hard to know how long a job is going to take you if you've never done it. So for my experienced blasters, they've been there. They've done that. They know how long a job is going to take for the most part. And so they can bid the job and just submit a flat rate. But for the newbies, it's tough. So it's safer for them to not lose money by charging an hourly rate because they're still learning how each job is going to take them. I think you can get away if the customer is like, absolutely not, I'm not doing that. Then you can call us or go to the contractor group, see what people are charging for those jobs, and then maybe price it higher, honestly, so you don't lose any money if that's what the customer wants. But absolutely, if you can charge by the hour, do it, because it's only going to help you in the long run not to lose any money.
Right. Like Mike said, you'll have zero surprises because if something goes wrong, you're still being billed per hour, right?
Sure.
Whereas if you absolutely needed to give them a flat rate, it's probably going to be inflated by a lot because you need to account for any surprises that may come about.
And people say, okay, well, Kaylin, how much does it cost to do a pool? Well,
right.
It could be like 5 layers of coatings that I have no idea the thickness of. You never know what that coating is going to be truly until you get out there and blast it. And if you can't do a test blast, then charging by the hour or on the bigger jobs, charging a day rate is usually the best way to go.
Right. I want to talk about your original goals when you first started your business. What were they when you first started out? And now that you're a little over a year into your journey with this business, have they changed?
When I first started out, I was just burnt out in the corporate world. I needed a break. I did very well in sales. Like I made really good money. And so that was something that was very hard to leave. But, my health was starting to suffer a little bit. And I was just like, I've got to do something different. And I need less stress in my life. And I don't want to travel every week, fly out on Tuesday and fly home on Friday. And you have no time to do anything in the own city you live in. And so my goals for starting this business probably different than a lot of people, but it was to have a little less stress in my life. But also, I spent years helping companies build up and sell more and all of that. And I wanted to try to do it for myself and see if I could build something up. And so in a way, it's been kind of therapeutic to do this. And I really like shooting the videos. That's probably one of my favorite things about owning this business is just shooting these like simple little videos I make. And I have a catalog of everything I've ever done. I worked 20 years and I have no catalog of me doing a sales presentation or doing a good sale or something like that. And so it's really cool to be able to look back and be like, wow, that's all the stuff I did that last year. And so it was all really satisfying for me. And I feel like I've done a lot of healing over the last year. I'm probably the most stress-free I've been in the last 10 years at least. And so now I'm kind of ready to ratchet up the business to the next level and focus on making some more money, but not at the cost of my health and my peace. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with it at this point.
That's awesome. I mean, that's great to hear that you're, way less stressed now than you were working, for someone else.
Absolutely.
And it's cool that now that you're looking into, the next year, maybe scaling up a bit, since you're the owner, you can always, adjust depending on, where you're at.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
absolutely.
I love that so much.
This is not what I expected to hear whenever I started this interview. Like, that Dustless Blasting as a life path for him has been more peaceful than any other career he's had prior.
Right.
That's awesome.
And like that is the whole point. When we make videos about what it's like to own and operate your own business, it's truly different for everybody. So sometimes it's hard to provide everything that goes into owning your own business. But I love that he speaks to the fact that it doesn't have to be stressful. Like if you have certain goals and one of those goals is being home for dinner every day with your family, this business can absolutely do that. And having the freedom and the flexibility to run it however you see fit for your, personal, professional, and mental health goals, I think is just awesome. So way to go, Mike. That's great.
And now after a year, he's like in a place where he wants to start ratcheting it up.
Sure.
It's for him now. It's for his family, right?
Yeah.
He's building something for his legacy, right?
And we have business owners that are like, I want to make as much money as possible. Like, I'm trying to make $1 million this year, and they work nonstop. They work weekends. They aren't home in time, for dinner with their family, but that's because that's what they want to do. So it's really just total freedom for you and what you want.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I am very proud of you, Mike. I think that's amazing. Seriously, taking care of your mental health and well-being and doing something for yourself is just something to be super proud of. So transitioning into something else that Mike is proud of, you asked him kind of what jobs were his favorite and what were some that made him proud. So let's hear what he had to say.
Yeah, I guess one that I'm really proud of is probably like my, fourth job I did or something like that. So probably within the first few months of start my business, I did what I consider a giant pool. I think it was 20 feet wide, 40-foot long, and 12 feet deep. And I had no idea what I was doing. I'm like watching all these videos, like I can't sleep the night before. I'm like, oh, I hope I don't like screw this up, and I just got in there and started doing it, and I learned so much, so like I spent like the first half of the day in the deep end blasting the pool, and the guy came home and he was like, that's looking good, and you don't have to go like that extreme with it. And so I was like, oh, okay. So then I backed off and I was moving faster, and I got technique down, and it took like a week. There was rainstorms, all kinds of stuff happened.
Oh, wow.
And so, yeah, I was really proud that I pulled that off, and it was like a $5,000 job. And that was the first time I hired a crew to clean everything up, and that worked out really well. Took that pressure off me, and everything went great, and the guy was really happy with it. So that was one I definitely will always remember.
On that job, what did you use for cleanup? Like, I know you didn't do it, but
Yeah.
did you see what the tools that they used?
Yeah, these guys were they were like just starting out their company doing construction site cleanup. Another little tip, I found them on Angie's List. So I started finding people to do cleanup on Angie's List, and then I'd do the job through Angie's List and then just go through them directly after that. And so that's a good place to find someone. But they had nothing special. They had a trailer, they put a tarp down, they had a few wheelbarrows, and they just went down there and shoveled it up, swept it up, and they had like 4 or 5 people. So they actually made really quick work of it. But it just goes to show you don't need any crazy vacuums or anything. They did a great job with just the most basic tools: push broom, shovel, wheelbarrow, and a tarp.
Yeah, we get a lot of questions about cleanup, specifically what tools to use, and there are like fancy things to buy if you want to,
Absolutely.
and I'm sure they're extremely helpful. But
Yeah.
I think a lot of people that we talk to, it's really the simple stuff, the stuff that just takes like some time and some work, to just get it all up,
So my advice for cleanup is don't do it. I try
Yeah.
very hard to just like avoid that altogether.
Mhm.
And honestly, it's worked out great. And like I said, it's just telling people like, hey, I can get this cleaned up for you, which involves me bringing a crew out. And, there's like, it's going to cost several $100s. Would you like to just save that money and do it yourself? So that's a good way to just bring it up to where you never even have to deal with it.
Sometimes the most rewarding jobs are not the prettiest jobs. I will say that sometimes it's just super satisfying to go out there and get the work done, no matter what it looks like. I feel like a lot of people think that this business is super like clean and pretty and not hard, but no, it's hard work. You're going out there, you're busting your rear, you're in the sun all day sometimes, but there's a sense of satisfaction from seeing a job completed from start to finish. That is what a lot of our customers thrive for. Like they really like that satisfying feeling.
And it's essential work. It'll never go away, right? Maintenance and repair is needed for everything.
Yeah.
On crucial surfaces that are crucial for our infrastructure or what have you, right?
Right. So he had also talked about cleanup a little bit in that clip as well. And there are a few different cleaning tools depending on the project you're on. So like for my pool guys, there is actually this cute little wheelbarrow that's hooked up with a vacuum where they suck everything up out of the deep end and it sucks it up into that wheelbarrow and you just go dispose of it. So once we get you plugged into that private contractor group, you'll be able to search for a variety of different cleanup options and blasting techniques, which, speaking of, I always love hearing if our blasters prefer to blast wet or dry, because people will get in very heated debates about this on the internet, especially if they don't own a dustless blasting system yet. They're like, wet is better. And then other people are like, no, dry forever, baby. So let's hear what method Mike prefers.
I want to pivot a little to your blasting techniques. I really want to know, do you primarily wet blast or dry blast? Like, how do you decide which to do given a particular job?
You know, when I first started out, I was real interested in the wet blasting because I saw a lot of videos about it and I understood like why it was cool. And so the first 2 or 3 jobs I did, it just so happened that they were perfect candidates for wet blasting. They were like one was residential area, the other one was inside a house. And so I found right away that I don't like the wet blasting because it's very messy, you know? So if you're comparing wet blasting to dry blasting, you know, when you're wet blasting, you're getting wet sand all over you. It's all over your clothes. And then cleaning up wet sand is very heavy as opposed to dry sand. And so there's a lot of reasons I don't like it, but I definitely like having the option because, you know, there's certain cases where you're in the city limits and you know that you're like, oh, they got that neighbor that's going to complain, you know,
Right.
I feel like when it comes to vehicles, for some reason, there is some horrible blasters out there that just go and ruin cars and warp them when they sandblast them. So there's a generation of guys out there that are afraid to get their car sandblasted because they think it's going to get warped. And, you know, it's just not the case. If you go on to our Facebook group, you'll see people that have done hundreds of cars and always done them dry, never warped them. But it's nice to be like, well, we can do it wet. And by the way, here's a video of me blasting a car wet. And so you kind of know what to expect. And that'll put people's mind at ease. So good option to have. Me, myself, I prefer the dry blasting.
Okay, I think we need to talk about this because this is a very commonly asked question. When is it appropriate to wet blast and dry? What's the, benefit of doing either one? So let's talk about, I'll answer my opinion and you can answer yours because everyone's different. But there are if it were me, these are the scenarios I would dry blast. I would dry blast any wood. If you're removing a coating from a wood surface, a log home, a wood siding with water, there's a chance you could damage the wood. It's not great to soak your wood with water. I would do it dry and I would do it with an organic abrasive material. So you can use a walnut shell or a corn cob if you dry blast with our machines. I would also do the interior of a vehicle dry. So anything that has like tight nooks and crannies, you don't want to pack wet media in those because it's super hard to get that out. So dry blasting the interior of a vehicle and then blowing that out with a leaf blower is when I would do something dry. Everything else you can do wet, and I would do wet for environmental reasons, especially in the residential sector. But the cleanup is required. Whatever goes in the pot must come out. So let's talk about cleanup for wet blasting.
So not just about cleanup, I think also about prep and about just the context, like what is the job? There are all factors that go into whether you choose to wet blast or to dry blast.
Yeah.
And I'm agreeing with everything that you mentioned before. with all that said, I think that there are a lot of jobs where dry blasting, even with containment, is just not it's just not possible. You just
Sure.
can't do it. That's a lot of reasons why people, even if they dry blast 95% of the time, they'll get a dustless blasting machine because that 5%
Yep.
is very high paying work that cannot be done any other way.
Right.
Right. And if nobody else in their area is doing that work, then that's guaranteed work for them. They can charge whatever they want, right?
Right. And we're not here to tell you what method to use. We don't care. That's why we manufacture the machine that can do both.
Yeah.
We are just here to guide you on like, hey, here's some applications where wet is better. Here's applications where dry is better. Some guys are going to dry blast till they die, and that's fine. As long as they're being safe about it, they have PPE, they're containing the area, they are aware of what the cleanup would look like, then I am like all for whatever your little heart desires, friend.
For sure. But I would recommend you get something that can do both.
Yes.
Staying on this topic, Mike had something to say about our favorite abrasive at Dustless Blasting, crushed glass.
Ooh.
What about general blasting tip? Is there any like pro tip, just basic, that you picked up over the past year?
Yeah, when I first started, I was like, oh my gosh, there's all these types of media. Like when you come into the office there, you're sitting at the conference table and there's like 10 different types of media. And so I'm like, gosh, there must be like all these different uses and everything. And, they explained to me, they were like, you just need the like medium crushed glass. I forget is it 40/70, or I always forget that terminology. I call it medium crushed glass. And I started using that right off the bat, and then for different reasons, a client would say like, "Oh, can we get this surface a little more smooth?" And so I started experimenting. I used coal slag. I think there was like 2 or 3 others I used, and the cost like right away on a lot of stuff doubles. I used some corn cob once, and I just found that like all roads lead back to just using that medium crushed glass. It's the cheapest. Now, it's sort of a regional thing. I've noticed what medias or what prices. So if you're in Florida, it might be cheaper to use a certain media. If you're in Oklahoma, I know the cheapest thing you can pretty much use is the crushed glass. And so it is so versatile. I've used it I did a project where I was stripping stain off of some cabinet doors, and the stain was just in like around the cabinet door. And so it was just like needed a very soft touch, and started out with the corn cob, and I went through a 30-pound bag in like 10 minutes, and I was just like, well,
Wow.
that was a huge waste, and it didn't even really get that great of results. I did the crushed glass. I just brought my pressure way back, stood off a little more, and it worked beautifully. So my tip is like, don't get too caught up in all the different types of media. Sure, as you get more professional and more experience, there are reasons that you'll need all that other stuff. But in my opinion, all you need is that medium crushed glass. It works. It's the most versatile and works so well.
Yeah, I would say in my experience, yeah, I've come to the same conclusion. It's just all around the most versatile, usually the cheapest. Of course, it depends
Yep.
on the area you're in, and
Right.
you should probably check that before you get into the business. One, the demand in your area, and two, what abrasives are around you, what suppliers that you have available to you.
Yeah.
But generally, 40/70 crushed glass, pretty good.
It is, and I was actually surprised how many suppliers there are. I live in Tulsa, which is like a medium-sized city, but
Mhm.
I was thinking like, oh my gosh, am I going to have to like go down to Houston and get a big pallet, bring it back? And right away, I found like 2 or 3 places. In fact, I even found a place that's like a couple miles from me, so it's so convenient, and they have a lot of the stuff I need, and so I can just walk in, and they'll come right out, load me up on the way to the job, and so that's been surprisingly convenient, actually.
Okay, so for my friends who don't know, they don't own a blasting business, people always ask, Kaylin, what media goes in the pot? For dry blasting, you can use any abrasive material that a traditional sandblaster uses. You can use that crushed glass, glass beads, a garnet, a coal slag, those organic materials that we had talked about, the walnut, the corn cob. And then for wet blasting, you can use any media that sinks in water. However, our go-to is the crushed glass. I don't know if you want to tell them why.
Yeah, I mean, it's like he said, it's something you just end up going back to because it's very versatile. Any abrasive has a cost associated to it, right? So you want a tool at your disposal that can do the most possible, right? In the same way a dustless blasting machine can wet blast and dry blast.
Yes.
Crushed glass can do a large variety of jobs well enough.
And there are some applications that you need to change your media, but we're just saying that this is a great starting point because it is so versatile. However, like if you're doing fire restoration, then you might want to use soda because it removes the soot smell and other things, other really specific use cases. And we're happy to provide you with a media guide on, what abrasive is appropriate for each application, or you can always call in and ask and we'll give you those tips as well. But crushed glass is king.
Just overall, what are some common mistakes that you've seen from other blasters? And, what tips could you give to help others avoid those mistakes?
The only mistakes I've come across is where someone blasts something and they don't educate the customer about flash rust. So, when I'm talking to someone, they're like, okay, I want to have my trailer blasted. I'm like, okay, when do you want to have it done? Well, I'd like to have it done Wednesday this week. And I'm like, okay, when are you planning on priming it or painting it? I would really prefer that you did it the same day or the next day, just in case there's any moisture so you don't get flash rust. And a lot of times it's so funny to me that people haven't thought of that. They're like, oh, okay, yeah, I guess I could go get that and have it ready. And I think it's just setting that expectation of what to expect helps. And so I'm like, it's looking like we're going to have rain on Wednesday. Or it's going to rain on Thursday right after I do it. So take all those things into account. That way someone doesn't get left with a trailer you just blasted and it's all rusted. That just leaves a terrible taste in their mouth. And I guess what happened to me is I learned the hard way. So I think it was my second job. I had the absolute worst case scenario. So this guy he was building a trailer for a pressure washing rig and he was out in the country and he got to the point where he was like, I want to have you come out and sandblast it. I'm like, okay, great. So check the weather. Everything's all clear. Ask him, when are you planning on painting this? I'm going to prime it as soon as you're done. Okay, perfect. So I come out, I start blasting this thing and start looking up. It's getting a little cloudy. And I'm like, oh man, that's not good. Next thing I know, it's crazy windy, blowing. And then I hear tornado sirens going off. Then it starts raining. And I'm just like, oh my gosh. So we're standing in his garage and it's just pouring rain on a freshly blasted trailer. It stops raining. We try to cover it with rust inhibitor just to maybe help. My machine gets stuck in the mud. I have to leave it there overnight. This is my brand new baby, And so come back the next day, the thing is covered in flash rust and the guy's just devastated. But, it was actually, I just charged him $100 and did a quick brush off and it was all good. But that made me really realize you got to watch out for the flash rush because it's a horrible experience. It doesn't end well.
Luckily, the equipment that you're using can solve the problem. But yeah, that is a horror story. I'm sorry you had to go through that.
And I just tell everyone to sort of expect something like that on your first one or two jobs where everything goes wrong, because it's going to happen sooner or later and it'll make you a better person in the end.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think being the authority when it comes to having the knowledge and giving that knowledge to your client about flash rust reflects well on you and it prevents a potential bad Google review coming your way.
Absolutely.
So that's a great tip from Mike.
Yeah.
And in order to educate your customer on how to avoid flash rust, you need to know how to do that yourself, right?
Yep.
What we use is a product called rust inhibitor.
Yep.
And we put that in our blast water and in our rinse water at a 1:100 ratio.
That will eliminate flash rust for 72 hours. It will leave the surface primer ready, but you have to tell your customer, hey, you need to get your painter in here ASAP so that we don't see any flash rust occur. And it's also super important to talk to your customer about recontamination. So if you blast something, but then it's like you talked about, super humid, or you run your hand across it,
or it rains,
then you're going to have some issues there. So educating your customer is huge. And then we have an entire rust inhibitor section on our website for how to use it and what that ratio looks like. But speaking of rust inhibitor and must-have products, let's see what Mike had to say about some accessories and products that he thinks every blaster should have.
I like to have some, I use AirPods, but just some in-ear headphones. So they kind of act as earplugs. So it's a little bit of ear protection, but also those things have noise canceling, which is awesome. So just them in your ears, not even playing anything, makes it much more pleasant. And then that way you can listen to music while you're blasting, listen to books. That I've learned that is just awesome to do that. So I always have my AirPods on me. The Nova Blast Hood. I love that thing. And when I was first starting out, it's kind of expensive. I think it was around $2,000 for the whole package. And I was like, oh, should I get that? And I am so glad I got that. The first two jobs, I didn't use it because there's a little assembly there. And like I told you, I was like coming back from Houston and I had a job the next day. And so I didn't have time to set it up. So my first two jobs I blasted without it. And I had like sand in my hair, every crack and crevice. And then I started using that thing and it is awesome. I will not fire up my machine without that because it, first of all, is nice and quiet in there. The climate control when it's hot, people think I'm like way tougher than I am. It'll be, 90 degrees outside. I'm underneath a car for 45 minutes blasting it. And I come out and they're like, are you okay? But they don't realize I have like ice cold air just pumping into my thing. And so that thing is awesome,
Have you ever tried the full body suit?
Yes, I got that about 6 months in, and I should have got that from the beginning because even when you're blasting dry, you get a certain amount of ricochet, so it's kind of constantly eating away. I wear like long sleeve shirts and the gloves and jeans, and it's always kind of eating away at that. But I found that it works really well. I saw on the Facebook group, someone was like, oh yeah, just get in there in like boxers and a t-shirt and then tuck your hood into it and the air will go down in it. So that thing's awesome. I only use that when I'm doing a job that's over a few hours. If I'm just doing like a 1 or 2 hour job, it's kind of a pain to like put that thing all on. And
Sure.
yeah, it's not like the most comfortable thing, but it works really good with the Nova hood or blast helmet, whatever you call that thing.
I think a Nova hood is definitely a must-have for all my blasters. And then that rust inhibitor that we talked about, extra nozzles, any other blasting gear and accessories and wear parts for your pot can be found in our online store.
Okay, so my final question with Mike, what has owning a dustless blasting business brought him, just generally?
It's been interesting. It's kind of helped me. I was like the white collar sales guy. And so it's toughened me up a little bit. And that was a good thing. Like I needed more physical exercise. And so at first I was like trying to find ways to not lift media like, oh, can I have it delivered to the job site? And then I realized I was like, this is a great exercise, lifting these bags, putting them in the machine or unloading them from my truck. People pay big money to go to the gym and get this. So it's also put me in contact with a lot of other small business owners. So it's really cool. I always like, if I meet a business owner, I'll be like, hey, when I'm done, I'll be like, hey, this is like my first year in business. Do you have any advice for me or things that have worked well in your business? And I've just gotten so many good little tidbits. I remember one in particular, I did a job for a really wealthy business owner. He owned a big business. He had like $1 million house and did a job. And we were talking afterwards. And he was real interested in me starting a business. And he thought that was pretty cool. And I asked him for his advice. And he said, when I first started my business, I just had to act like I was broke. And everything went through the filter of like, I'm broke, can we afford this or whatever? And I was like, well, that's easy because I am, So that had turned out to be really good advice, keep your expenses low. And so I've gotten some really good relationships with these different business owners that I've worked with. So that's been really good.
That's awesome. You've been able to meet new people, stay in physical shape, right? Like those are definitely some benefits of of owning your own business, especially like a more physical one.
One other thing I just thought of, I would totally be remiss if I did not give a shout out to Kent from Blast. So I was posting something on the Facebook group once, and this guy reached out to me, and he goes, "Oh, I'm just outside of Tulsa in Claremore, and maybe we should like go have lunch or something." So we started talking, and they told me to like go meet the competition, and I was a little hesitant. I was like, I don't know how that's going to work. Are they going to like welcome me? Are they going to feel like I'm encroaching on their business? And that relationship has been awesome. Him and I have gone to lunch, I think 3 or 4 times now, and he's been in the business for 5 years. And it's just really nice to have someone that does what you do. So like you do a crazy job and you send them a picture, and they're like, oh my gosh, I just finished this job today. It almost killed me. And they can relate. Or sometimes big jobs will call, and I know he's probably going to get the call and we're both going to bid it. And so I may say like, hey, here's what I bid it for. Don't bid it any lower than that. And it's just been awesome. So I encourage everyone, definitely reach out to the other guys that own sandblasting businesses. It really helps if they own the MMLJ equipment, because you just really have some stuff in common. So I think that's been a really good thing as well, to have someone to relate to that does what you do.
I'll say for the people who are considering getting into business, this is a very common question I get, is like, hey, can you look up to see if there's someone near me? Because I don't want to do this if there's someone down the street.
Yeah.
And I understand the logic behind that. We worry about competition and we're scared of it. It's a very natural thing to feel, but every single business owner that I have talked to tells me this exact thing, from Patrick to Mark to Randall to now Mike. They all say, get in touch with the people in your area. One, because you create those relationships. It's nice to talk to people who are in the same boat as you. But also, the guy down the street might not be wanting to take on the same jobs as you. So, you guys can share jobs if you're approached with a project that's maybe outside of your scope, or it's too big and you need another blaster on hand. I think that's amazing advice that people should really consider. All right. Well, Mike, thank you so much on behalf of all of us here at Dustless Blasting for taking the time to talk with Michael about your experience, your first year in business, and just being so open and willing to share that advice and feedback with us and with our viewers. I know this information is going to be super valuable for them and us. So we love that, and we really thank you so much and are wishing you the best of luck. For all of our viewers out there, if you have any questions about anything we talked about, or if we missed something and you wish you would have heard more about a certain topic, leave it in the comment section below. And we plan on having a follow-up episode if there's a lot of comments about like, hey, I like what Mike said about this. Can you talk more about that?
Right. And we'll also be playing with this format a little bit, so let us know what you think of it. And looking forward to the next one.
Yeah, if you have any questions about our blasting equipment or starting a business with them, visit dustlessblasting.com. We'll see you guys next time.